That's over 6 foot tall. That one's over 10 foot tall. Yeah, so I straightened out the wires and designed it out.
Okay, I got 6 o'clock, so at this time, I'd like to get our meeting started, but before we do, we're gonna say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight. Looks like we've got a room full. First item is to amend or accept tonight's agenda. There is one amendment that we have to make. It's on the back side of your page there, action item H. In that first line there, we are going to cross out permanently and put directly.
That was my error. I apologize for that vocabulary.
Does anybody else have any amendments to tonight's agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Support.
All right, we have motion support for the amended agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? At this time, we're moving on to public comment. If anybody here has anything they'd like to say, now is the time. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yep.
Clayton Gildy, just had some brief statement prepared for the board.
Okay.
Thank you. As a parent of a student here at the school, I fully support further discussion of school safety. I appreciate what you guys have done so far. And I would please consider forming a safety committee comprised of, but not limited to, students, parents, teachers, administration, and board members. I would hope that the board continues to maintain the school as a gun-free zone. And data from the Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training Center, or the ALERT Center, from the Texas State University has proven that a good guy with a gun rarely stops an active shooting. And their data, and according to their study, for 433 active shootings from 2000 until 2021, they found that 22 times a bystander shot the attacker and prevented the attack. And furthermore, of those 22 times, 12 of them were an armed citizen, and 10 times was an armed security guard or an armed off-duty officer. And I would foresee, if this board decided to make a committee or to move forward, that they would consider discussing Senate Bill 1181, which was sponsored by our own Senator Curtis Vanderwall, currently in appropriations. It would utilize $238 million of the state's unappropriated so far Federal American Response Plan Act, or the Rescue Act, I should say, on the coronavirus funds, to cover the installation and 4 years further of real-time monitoring services of a third-party vendor technology that could be integrated with McBain schools already using their current video security system to detect firearms and alert authorities. And this would be immediate. This notification would be immediately related to local law enforcement, and essentially those agencies could coordinate a rapid response based on that and that technology. I see that this technology and others could significantly reduce response times, most importantly, save and protect our students and staff. So I appreciate you. Thank you for your time today.
All right. Thank you, Clayton.
Thank you. The chair over there.
Anybody else have anything for public comment? Okay, seeing none, hearing none, public comment is closed. And so now we are going to move on to our special guest tonight, Mr. Scott Unger from Baird, Cotter and Bishop, to present our...
Appreciate it. I'm going to focus mainly on page
7 and 8, which is under the basic financial statements tab. The one thing I want to point out before I kind of get into how the district came out is, if you look at the top of page 7, you can see our federal sources is 1.7 million this past year. If you go back 2 years ago, that was 481,000. So we went from 481 to 1.2 million to 1.7 million. And the main thing I think we have to consider going forward is where is that going to be? Not so much in the 23-24 year, but that final year. More likely, that number is going to go down considerably. And so that way, a lot of those funds are grant driven. So we're going to need to make sure those expenditures go down as well. When putting together the 23-24 budget. If you look at the next page, this shows the different funds of the school district and how we came out. The general fund had a drop in their fund balance of $312,000. Last year, there was an increase of $280,000. And the big difference between the 2 years is that this year we had budgeted and transferred that $280,000 that was made last year into the capital project fund that is not bond related. So you can see at the end of the 22 year, our capital project fund finished with a fund balance of $577,000. And the general fund finished with a fund balance of $2.2 million. That $2.2 million equates to about 18% of our expenditures. That's down from about 23% last year. And again, part of the reason that's down is because our expenditures went up by $1.5 million from a year ago. And again, a lot of that is grant driven. So I would anticipate, 2 years from now, those expenditures are probably going to come back down. As you work across the page, the ELC Capital Projects Fund, that is just about wrapped up. So there's $43,000 left at the end of the year. So I would anticipate that fund will more than likely end in this 23-24 year, or 22-23 year. Our food service fund had a nice increase to $346,000. The one thing we have to keep in mind in that fund, we actually have too much fund balance in there. The state only wants you to have about 3 months operating expenditures in that fund. Right now we're over that. So that is a finding we have to report to the state, and there's a spend down plan that the school is required to do. You're not alone. Probably the majority of our schools have that same problem. Between these COVID years, we had to spend the money down, but the amount of additional federal revenue that came into those funds just made it hard to get that down to the 90 days of expenditures. So what a lot of schools are doing is spending it on capital outlay. This is probably the most common area that we see. The last column are other non-major governmental funds. That consists of our debt fund, our library fund, and our student activities. The debt fund is down to $37,000. We have no debt, which is great. So I know they're in the process of making sure we're approved to go ahead and transfer that over out of the debt fund over to the general fund. And then what's left is our library fund. That has $69,201 in fund balance. The grant that came through, that money really didn't come in until after the end of the year. And it's expenditure driven, so that's really going to be revenue in this coming year. And the last fund is our student activities fund of $158,244. So in all, again, the school for the general fund, they had about a break even if you don't take into consideration the transfer out during the year. And they're still at a good fund balance. I know a lot of districts try and be at that 15 to 20% range or more. I think you're no different than most districts. I think the big question is going to be, where is funding going? We had a great increase in the foundation allowance. We've had a lot of federal funds come in the last couple of years. Is that all going to drop off in 2 years? What will happen with that foundation allowance? I know 10 years ago or so, we had a couple of years where it didn't go up at all. We actually had a cut in our foundation allowance. So it's budgeting, I think, is going to be crucial in these next couple of years as it relates to the grant expenditures and grant revenue coming in.
Okay, any questions for Scott?
Scott, the capital project fund is all unrestricted, am I right on that?
Correct.
It's all unrestricted?
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, but when it's related to a bond fund, it's restricted. Yeah, because really came from the general fund money. You can actually transfer back to the general fund if you had to.
okay. And what's left in the debt retirement fund, you said will go to the general fund?
Correct. Typically if there's other debt funds out there, it's
Yeah.
required to go to the next
Okay.
debt, and because there is no debt fund,
Okay,
and based on the dollar amount in that fund, you should be able to transfer to the general fund, but we do want to make sure, we check with your attorneys to make sure that isn't going to be an issue.
when I looked at compared to budget, as far as revenue goes, there was quite a large difference in the other transactions. You remember off the top of your head what that is? It was significantly below what was budgeted. You recall what that is, or?
What page are you on, Jim?
Well, I'm looking at the detail on page 38. It was under other transactions, it was budgeted at 421, came in at 216.
There was a lot of grant-related expenditures we had to pull out right at the end of the year because they were restricted in nature and the money was not spent. So for example, I think there's about 300,000 of unearned revenue that we show on the balance sheet. Well, last year I think it was about 70,000.
Okay,
I'm not sure if that's where it was budgeted or not.
okay. As far as expenditure goes, compared to budget, it looks like it was kind of across the board, under. There were some bigger items, but pretty much across the board, we were under budget,
Right.
for the most part.
Yeah, but that's typical. Most schools, we're
Yeah.
required to keep it under budget, so that final budget, they'll usually try and, increase those.
Mhm. Other question I had, in relation to the pension liability that we carry, what's the expected life of that? In my lifetime maybe, or?
Let me put it this way, from the McBain School District standpoint, your overall liability went down by about $1 million this past year.
Okay,
And that's according to the state, actually,
Right.
just allocated to different schools. Will that go down this coming year? The actual report is as of September 30th. And I tell you what the stock market was as of September 30th was not good.
yeah,
So that's gonna factor in, but you also have, the new teachers coming into the plan,
right.
that are not in the old plan with it, because that's what drives that big, unfunded.
So I think it was around 14 million on our report, I think. So if I understand that right, the state gives us the money and then we basically pay it
Some of our,
back.
yeah, basically the state aid that comes in, that is a portion of the state aid, that comes in for retirement, we pay into the system.
Okay.
But then we also have our own, expense that we put into the
Sure,
system that's probably
sure.
close to 30%.
But my question is, that liability that we are carrying, is there any projected payoff date on that?
I don't know that for a fact. I think the last time I looked at it, it was at least 20 years out,
20 more years out?
at least, but I don't have that. I mean,
Yeah.
that changes monthly, or, but your liability for pension was just over 14 million, and the other post-employment benefit liability was just under $1 million, so a total of about 15 million.
And those are related to past obligations. I mean, as far as our current obligation, that's all kept current now.
No, I mean, they do an actuarial report of, they project out, there's a lot of factors, they'll put in, implied, interest rates and assuming, projection of the, lifespan of different people, so there's a lot that goes into the
But a lot of it came from past decades, didn't it? Yeah.
100%, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any more questions for Scott? Thank
All
you.
right, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott.
On your next.
Thank you.
See ya.
Have a good night. Okay. On to, Miss Heather Wiggins, you're up next.
Good evening. This would be the 4-year rotation for the band trip.
You should have received something for an itinerary. We were actually accepted back in May, which is when I normally would have done this, but we didn't have any transportation. The state, the busing system is just really not so good, but we got some. So a couple weeks ago, a bus came available on Thursday, and Mr. Aiken graciously let me put this in to your board tonight. The price is significantly higher, like almost double. However, we have parents that are willing and grandparents that are willing to help us fundraise, and hopefully we will take at least $20,000 off the top of it to keep it within probably $50 of where we did it 4 years ago. Inflation was $16,000 more for this trip for the exact same van trip between Disney, hotel, and busing. But we did have some parents that are willing to help us, and we're gonna keep it around. So hopefully, the agenda looks pretty similar to the last 4 we've done, just one is New Orleans, the other ones. It's a great trip. We're going, our performance area is Disney Springs. If you allow us to move forward with this, we'll get payment options out to people so they can start making small payments. And the date is April 6th, which is a little later than normal. I sat down with Mr. Mulder because the last time we went, we had a conflict with sporting events. And some kids had to fly home early to get to, I believe it was a basketball game. And we really wanted to avoid all of that. So he told me that this week would be the best week to go, even though there was some baseball starting, it was just practices or non-conference games, so.
Okay.
Any questions for me?
I don't.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay,
Thank you. Okay, moving on to routine matters. We need to approve our minutes from our previous meeting last month. I thought they looked good.
I'll make a motion.
Support.
Motion support to approve the minutes from our previous meeting. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Treasurer's report.
Yeah, so our food service started the month of September 1st with $607,544.43, ending on September 30th at $568,549.46. Remember, we are seeing a little bit of a decrease in our food service and kids participating. This year, they have to pay. So we do see a decline in that. We kind of anticipated that going into it. So in talking with Scott Hunter about our fund balance being too large, he felt that it was appropriate for us to kind of continue to monitor that for a while, just to see what our fund balance looks like after a few months with the declining in participation.
So is that money restricted at all, or, I mean, could we do capital purchases with that? or-
Only for kitchen
For
areas.
kitchen.
Yeah, only for food service areas, anything that touches food service.
Okay. So there would be possibilities to spend it down in larger amounts?
Yep. You couldn't buy bleachers for the football field, but we can buy cafeteria tables. So,
Is there kind of a list they're working on of things that need to
yeah,
take?
you know, we did the coolers last year and the freezer last year. I know that we had talked about flooring in the kitchen area at one point too. So, yep, Tammy and I will be discussing that, but I kind of want to get a handle on our participation first. So, our general fund, as starting on September 1st, was $1,011,598.87, and ending at $1,037,691.95. Would you like Liz to give out the quarterly report now? Would that be an appropriate time?
Sure, that'd be nice.
Oh, sorry, Liz.
Oh, no, you're fine. Keep pass it around. And this is the first time I've given you a quarterly report, and
No
so
sense in that way, no
if
sense in this way.
you want different information, if you want more information, less information, you can let me know. I mean, basically, all that I have on this one pretty simplified is the original adopted budget and then kind of where we are as far as revenues and expenditures to date. So, and the revenue looks very small because we, in the month of September, we don't get state aid. And the state aid that we got over July and August is technically revenue from last school year,
So we just skip 1 month now, as far as state aid payment, just 1 month without payment?
Without, yes, in September, yeah. We'll get the next payment in October, and then those revenue numbers will start looking different. And then also some of the revenue that we have gotten, actually cash we've gotten is for last year's grants and stuff, so that doesn't count towards.
So in likelihood, that revenue comparison is always gonna lag because we got that 2 month difference between the state year and our year.
Right.
So that's
right.
always gonna be low.
Right. In June, it'll jump up because we'll accrue
You
that
pick up those
revenue
2 months,
back.
yeah.
Yeah, so. Yeah.
I think
And
this is
then
good.
as we request grant funds, as we have expenditures throughout the year, those will, pop on here.
Mhm.
So now we maybe do that like quarterly or maybe more often, depending on how much we've spent and request, so.
We won't do a budget amendment until January.
Right,
And we'll get a little better handle for Liz and I,
Sure.
this month, with the count day being this past Wednesday.
Mhm.
So it'll give us kind of an idea of where we're sitting count wise, so.
I think this is good though. It's nice to see.
Yeah, and anything, Liz is fantastic, anything you guys wanna see changed or anything like that, she'd be happy to do that. But I think it's an excellent start.
Yeah, this is nice.
Yeah, I like it.
Thanks, Liz.
Welcome.
Nice.
Is that all you had?
It is, until
Until
later.
later. We have a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
Motion. Support.
Motion and support. Any more discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thanks, Scott. Matt, consider some general fund invoices for payment.
Alright. I would like to make a motion to pay from the general fund checks 73887 through 74085 for $340,234.82. And from food services checks 73925 through 74032 for $25,577.38.
Supported.
Okay, we have motion and support for our invoices. Any discussion or questions?
I know in a couple items, the bus repairs are really eating us, aren't they?
Yes. So last week we had 5 buses down and had to use all of our spares. So Scott's definitely feeling it. So he sent me a report this afternoon about everything he's been working on. I haven't really had a chance to look at it yet, but.
I see that there was a large purchase of the iPads. Is that still ESSER money or is that coming out of the general fund now?
It's still ESSER money.
That'll be ESSER?
Mhm.
All right.
This will be the last round probably of ESSER funds.
The last one.
Purchases, yeah.
Okay, we have motion and support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. District testing data presentation.
Yes, so we thought we would share some data with you. I have it behind you there, Dennis, in case you. Sorry about that. I had asked, last month about our student count in school of choice and kind of just give you an overall overview of where we are sitting as a district. As you see, our elementary grades are, besides 4th for some reason, are quite a bit higher than the rest of the district, but eventually that will feed into the middle school and the high school. So we have 91 kindergarten students enrolled this year. That's our largest, 5th grade 98 is our largest group, with our seniors being 57 as our smallest group that we have. School of choice numbers.
So this year we monitored our school of choice numbers and we limited different grade levels to maintain that we weren't needing to build or add classrooms or add staff. You see kindergarten is our highest with 28 students. That is also something we need to keep track of because our Little Wheels program is now feeding into our elementary school. It's something that we want to make sure we keep that kindergarten spots available. But everyone else, under 5. But we had 11th grade, we had 5 total. 12th grade, we had 1. So this 22-23 school year, school of choice numbers, we had 52 students total that enrolled in McBain schools. Our district total, now this number might be a little off because as I said last week was our count day. But K-12, once they're school of choice in, they're considered our student, but they're still kind of tracked as a school of choice student. District total of 324 K-12 students are school of choice students. That's a big difference. If you took that 324 students away from our student count, that's a lot of money that the district would not receive. That would drop the district down to probably, when I was in school, a Class D school. And our students would have limited options for coursework as well. Your bands, your arts, your different things would not, probably more than likely, be an option. So, and I know as a district, we covet those spots and we want those for our kids. So 324 students, outgoing students though, we have 141 students that live in McBain's district going to other school districts. We have some in virtual schools, we have some in schools in Detroit that are virtual. We have students that are leaving as well. Bragging point though is 89% of our students that live in McBain attend McBain schools. That's a really good attrition rate. But I thought you'd find that interesting that I'd share.
So the numbers, other than kindergarten, did that fill all the requests, or were there denials?
So you're only allowed to deny school of choice kids if you're not drawn, if you have a limited number,
Right.
or if you've been suspended in the last 2 years.
Okay.
So we did have some students that we denied who had been suspended from another
Okay.
district. So we're able to do that. Every student that applied that was in the drawing was accepted. We didn't have any over 5, so.
I'm assuming COVID had an effect, maybe a little bit of an uptick in the virtual.
It could be, because it really wasn't an option before. I don't know if you remember, before COVID, they said virtual schools were going away, right? There was a lot of legislation that was introduced that was going to cancel virtual programming. COVID has proven otherwise. I was talking to a director of a virtual school this morning. She had 3,200 students enrolled last year in their virtual school. This year they have 2,400. So kids are starting to come back to in person.
I would assume extracurricular activities would be a factor in that.
Sure. Ready, Mr. Biller?
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. This is performance data. So this is the proficiency data, how well our students did last year. So our kids who are seniors this year, this would be their 11th grade data, and so on and so forth. The 10th graders, 9th graders, and so on. So if you click the screen next, you'll notice that it's really kind of a nice little blend here. Left to right is the percentage of students at a proficiency rate. McBain High School's at the top, and what you're seeing compared there, or at least shown, are 3 different things. Our students in the English reading and writing portion of the SAT, or excuse me, PSAT, and then the math portion is the yellow. So the green bar represents our students in English reading and writing, who were freshmen last year, sophomores this year. Walking the hallways, 70% is outstanding, and our teachers should be extremely proud in that number. We're typically pretty high in that number, but in another slide you'll show I'll show you the trend, but 65%, almost 65% in math is really quite a dramatic jump. We've had a few things, I think, that have contributed to that. Our staff is continuing to implement the CPM programming and the consistency of that, I think, with the ninth graders last year, I think is really starting to kick in. And they're starting to talk the language of math and understand that better as well. 60% or 59.5% of those students met that proficiency bar from the state level. They met both. So almost 60% of our students who are sophomores walking the halls are that from last year's spring data. The ISD then you can see in comparison, meeting both. The blue bar is much lower, as well as the state much, much lower. Our kids do great. They do great compared to our ISD schools, as well as the average, as well as the state.
So 7% are achieving the goals that we've set, or the state has set. Is that what that's saying? Or,
The 70%?
yeah, or any of the percents?
Yeah, so there's a benchmark goal line that they would like each student to kind of perform around, and so our kids 70% met that goal.
Met that goal, okay.
Yes.
That's a national.
Met the national, excuse me, it's a national test. I'm sorry, I keep saying state.
Okay.
The national goal. These are those same students. Actually, it's cohorted data from all of our freshman years for over the past 4 years. So if you see on the left side, the English reading and writing scores, this is traditionally what our freshmen have done PSAT-wise in terms of percent, and you can see how it upticked there. But still, right in the high 60s is traditionally where our kids have been performing for English reading and writing. And then math on the other side, that has been a focus area for our school, obviously, and we've changed the new program and things, and that bar there you can see in this last year jumped up quite a bit. So the next slide is our 10th graders, which are our juniors walking the halls today. Again, our green bars are the English and reading and writing scores, and our math is there. All those red, the green and the yellow are above the comparison for the ISD average and also the state average. Blue bar would represent then both, that they would met that both standard for both of those. And this would be our sophomores. Traditionally, in their sophomore year, we've been on English reading and writing on the left-hand side, 4 bars, the blue, orange, yellow, and green are those years. Remember, we skipped a year in there because of COVID, so that 1920 is missing because we didn't test during that school year, right? So this is 2 years, moving left to right, blue to orange, 1819, and then our skip year was between the two orange and yellow. So a little bit down in terms of comparison what traditionally sophomores have been scoring at. We know that, and we are taking targeted measures with our kids. That's much of the reason why for the NWEA data that we have that discussion going. So math, although you can see last 2 years that we've tested 45% and then 39. So traditionally we're at 44, even so low as in 1919 there, a little bit lower. So we're still hanging in there in terms of that for those juniors from this data, but hopefully this year we'll push them over the edge with the SAT. So, and then finally our SAT, these would be our seniors. Last year for 11th grade took the SAT in the spring, and saying the blue bar is meeting both the English and math portions, 62.5% there for the English reading and writing, and the math at 42.9. Still outperforming than the average there. The ISD average there, meeting both, we were just a little under, but again, right there, just short of the state. So. Still very pleasing to see our English reading and writing up there. That's a point of pride with our English teachers, Mr. Forsell, Mrs. Hamlin, and Mrs. Johnson. They do a great job with our kids. And that's the proficiency trend for the last 4 years of our juniors. again, that missing year between the orange and the yellow. You can see they're tracking pretty well and even bumped up since last year. So again, these are different cohorts, different kids, but it gives you comparison anyway, traditionally what we score. We have our improvement goals. Obviously, you saw there with some of the math scores to improve achievement, and then also working with social emotional learning and literacy goals. Our next slide talks a little bit more about our targeted areas. This would be for the district, by the way.
Yeah, go ahead, next slide.
Yeah, next slide. So our building levels, again, keeping those two things in mind, also building essential literacy best practices and strategies. At MTSS, with addition of Mrs. Schmidt, our school social worker, working on some interventions for kids, supporting them whole child, and then improving our student attendance is a big thing for us. We think if we continue to get our kids here on a regular basis, we can do more things with them. And then always, I think NWEA showed us last year how beneficial it is to look at data and look at growth and have some things to pay attention to for intervention then. So it's kind of where we are. Again, that's proficiency data. NWE is growth data by individual, right? So, but my slideshow will talk more about the national norm test, PSAT and SAT. That's what we take. So, any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Mr. Finch.
How's it going, sir?
Good.
How do I get out of this?
Escape.
Where's this key? Looking for a button, not a light up light.
There we go.
All right, so looking at the middle school data, our main focus of our data that we get is from the NWEA, and that helps guide us 3 times a year looking at our data. For each grade level, the top bar for that grade level is the end of the year, and then we look at our 6th grade current. We pulled that data. We spent 2 days this past week diving into the data as content areas, and we wanted to really see where our students were, because we do understand we come back in the fall, some kids might not put in 100% effort. So we want to see, is there a trend for certain students that are underachieving, see what we can put in place to help boost them up. One of the amazing things looking at this data, you'll see more in further slides to come, typically we see a summer slide where kids test higher in the spring, they get 3 months off for the summer to come back, you lose a little. I was quite impressed to see minimal slide between the groups. If you look at the blue for the low underachieving, and in fact, when you look at our 7th grade, they actually achieved higher in our lower groups coming back this fall than what they were in the spring. So overall, data's looking pretty decent. On our math, we definitely are seeing a trend with the math curriculum. Our 8th graders have now had all 3 years of it, and you can see that they're really holding on to that content of our high, average, and our high is holding strong as it's going through. So, this is looking at our NWEA reading. Again, we did not see that major summer slide, so especially if you're looking at 52 kids in the low average, they came back over the summer, must have had one heck of a reading program going on, or they really loved their books, because we dropped that number down to 40. So that's quite a significant drop in the low to low average group of students as we were looking through. Again, numbers are looking very strong of how many kids are in our average, high categories comparing from last spring to this fall. Then our next area would be our science. And so 6th, 7th, and 8th grade all take the science. And that is impressive to see how the science curriculum is building year to year for their achievement, watching that, especially the green and the orange, but the yellow included, continue to climb as you move down through that. And when it says grade 8, end of the year, that's really last year's 7th graders, this year's 8th graders, for a direct comparison of students from one area to the other. Then this is the impressive numbers. When I look at it in direct comparison, our sixth grade English M-STEP, this is the percent that are proficient or advanced, so it means they passed the test according to state standards of where they said achievement should be. So our sixth grade English, our state average was 37.6. ISD did a little bit better than the state at 39.1. McBain, 43.1. A pretty solid standing in the reading department there. Sixth grade, you can see the state at 28. ISD achieved a little bit lower than the state, and we were 4 points above at 32.3. Our seventh grade, state was 37.7. ISD did pretty well at 40.1. And most impressively, our English for seventh grade was 63.4. 23-point gain on the ISD and more than that on the state is definitely our seventh grade English department has got their stuff down. You'll see that seventh grade group also achieved very highly comparatively with the state and ISD for their math scores. Again, 16 points is huge. We're looking at our PSAT for the eighth grade English, and that's our measuring factor and not the M-STEP. State, 59.7, ISD right in line with 59.3. McBain coming in 10 points higher with our average for achievement in our English, our eighth grade math. And Mrs. Verberkmos was about doing cartwheels when I showed her this data. But you can see the state at 36, ISD at 33.7, McBain coming in at 51.5. And our science scores, or our social studies scores, again, phenomenal programming going on, and they have really proved themselves all across the board to have that kind of a growth over the state and the ISD. Eighth grade science is not available at this time. They just are not producing the data out for us. So we can't look to see how that goes, but looking at our NWA, we're pretty confident that that will show adequate growth above. So we're very proud of it. We had a great time going through the data, and we have a bunch of next steps following up to ensure we're getting interventions in place and eyes on the students that are underperforming to make sure that we're trying to meet their needs and continue to boost these scores.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening. So I have math and reading for grades 3, 4, and 5 for you on these slides. Third grade math, we performed very well. The bar graph is just for that visual, just so you can see the comparison numbers on your right-hand side. State 41.5%, ISD 35.4%, and 62.3% of our students were proficient or advanced, with another 20-some% in partially proficient. Many of those students were close to proficient when you looked at their total score. So very pleased with that. Third grade reading looks very similar. State 41.5, ISD 36.9, we were at 65.2. And again, another 20-some% at partially proficient, and probably half of those very close to proficient, very, very close. Fourth grade math did very well. State and ISD hovering around the 35%, and we were at 50% of our students were proficient or advanced with math. And fourth grade reading looks good as well.
Sorry.
That's okay. Above the ISD and the state, a little closer on this one. But we have seen this over the years with fourth grade, moving from third grade to fourth grade, and not just our school, but other districts as well, where the rates drop a little bit. Not sure what that is, but we're very pleased with these numbers. And again, a lot of kids in the partially proficient category, very close to scoring proficient. So those are things that we're looking at this year. And fifth grade math, above ISD and the state there, very close to 40%, did very well. So we're pleased with that. And then fifth grade reading looks like this. State 43%, ISD 37%, we were at 35%. I forgot to include fifth grade social studies. I didn't even think to put them in there because I was so focused on reading and math, but those are numbers that I could get you an email to you if you're curious to see them. These are NWEA scores, and I wanted to show you these just because these are NWEA scores. I wanted to show you just because we're so worried about closing the learning gap when it comes to COVID. So what you're looking at, there's a lot here. You are looking at each grade level, and that's their average RIT score, and that's just kind of NWEA language. When the kids take the test, they get a score, and the numbers just kind of rank them against national standards and then against how kids do nationally. They get assigned a percentile. But then we get an average score for them that we look at against benchmark cut scores. So these are the average scores for you, and really why I'm sharing this is because I just want you to see that we have seen a COVID impact, but at the same time, our kids are still doing very well. So when you look at math on the left side, reading on the right side, and you look across 2019, 2020, 2021, we do see a bit of a drop. You would expect most of the drop to happen in 2020, that would be the fall of 2020, but there are some places where we see the drop the fall of 2021. And so impact even a year later. But like if you look at kindergarten, it kind of makes sense because kids were not in preschool. So kindergarten does not experience the drop 2020, they experience the drop 2021. And you notice that in both math and reading. Most other grade levels, they experience the drop fall of 2020. So looking at first grade for math, they dropped in 2020. Second grade, they also did. Because over time, we would look for those RIT scores to increase from year to year to year. When you look at 2021, 2022 though, we see that those scores start to climb back up. So second grade 2022, they're back at an average of 179.5 on math, up to 170 for reading. We see an increase with, I think, fourth grade and fifth grade as well. So we see that those RIT score averages are coming back up as you look at each grade level from year to year. But the other thing I wanted to point out, and I'm going to walk up so I can show you, otherwise it might be a little tricky. When you look at the cohorts, kindergarten from, say, 2019, when they're first graders in 2020, second graders, third graders, we're still seeing those increases. So there's a 14-point increase from fall of 2019 to when they're first graders, and then there's a 12-point increase, and then there's a 19-point increase. And as you look at those cohorts, if you started with first grade here, 10 points, 15 points, 13 points, we're still seeing the growth over time. So even though we experienced a dip in our learning, and COVID and being virtual certainly impacted that, we're still seeing the growth out of our kids. So our tier 1 instruction is still working for them, and we're working on filling in those gaps. So I wanted to show you that.
Thanks, dude. Is that all for that? That was a lot.
Are those graphs available, Scott, that we could look at again?
We could share them with you.
Could you? I think it'd be a good idea.
Do I have a motion to approve our district testing data?
Motion.
Support.
Any discussion or questions for anybody? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Our safe return to learning and continuity of services plan.
Yes, so this is a plan that was introduced back in, oh goodness, I should know the year. 2021, is that when we closed down and returned to school the following year? And every district had to have a plan on how they're gonna deliver their services.
Yep.
We thought that went away, but it didn't. So I need to report out to you our McBain's plan again. And I believe it goes away in 2023, so we'll have to do this a couple more times. My understanding is it has to be like every 6 months, so you'll see it again in January, February-ish. But basically this is to account for the ESSER funds and the additional federal funding that we have received. Our instructional model will look like this school year. All students will attend school full-time, 5 days per week, following the published school calendar. When the school start is Tuesday, August 23rd. Do we still have free lunch or breakfast? Unfortunately, we don't. That seamless summer option is no longer for McBain. We do have meal pricing for students kindergarten through 5th grade at $2.75. 6th to 12th grade, $3, and adults are $5.15. Some communities still sorry, that threw me off. Still offer a free lunch because their community eligibility provision, their poverty level is so high, their poverty rate for the community is so high that makes it an option. McBain's is not that high, so we have to pay. Will McBain schools offer a virtual option for students? Will not make any virtual options for students. The only virtual option that we have for students are students that are behind credit-wise, and it's a credit recovery program, which was also offered pre-COVID to students. Our assessment practices, as you see, we were following a great assessment program. Our NWEA scores, and that assessment program, as well as the state testing program. Mental health supports. We've increased our mental health services by providing our additional social workers. We hired 2 last year through the 31O grant. And we also have a new counselor and nurse through the District Health Department, or District Health Department 10, through a grant we received for them. Extended learning schools. We have a credit recovery option summer school for our high school kids, and we also have summer school for our English language learners, as well as this year we had summer school options for some of our lower elementary students as well. Specialized services, we will continue to provide any specialized services that our students need that they qualify for under an IEP or 504 plan. That includes any services provided by the ISD. The ISD will continue those services. Face masks. Face masks are not required. Are they required to get the COVID-19 vaccine? No. We're not separating students from vaccinated and unvaccinated. We're no longer in cohorts on the classroom or playground. We will continue, quarantine restrictions will come from our local health department. They will make that determination. We will not be testing student athletes for COVID-19. Disinfection practices, we'll continue our disinfection practices as we have. Additional prevention strategies. We'll consider any recommendations from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and the local health department. Masks are optional. We're going to strongly encourage hand washing. Social distancing, we still recommend 3 to 6 feet. We are allowing visitors and guests into the school. So that is our safe return to learn plan and the continuity of services.
Do we have a motion for our plan?
So moved. Support.
Motion and support. Any questions on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? On to letter F, 98C, addressing learning loss plan.
Yes, so this is a grant that we are applying for to help offset some of the costs for the district for additional instructional time. McBain High School will offer a credit recovery program during summer school for our students. We'll also offer for our high school students after-school tutoring 4 days a week with a certified teacher. McBain Middle School will also offer after-school tutoring programs for our students. McBain Elementary School offered summer school programming for our students this past year, and also our English language learners, a summer school program for them as well. One thing that we did this year that we haven't always done, my understanding, is we provided transportation for these students as well. So we were able to remove any barriers that they may have to attend school. We found that the high school students were much more successful in person than doing their virtual programming from home. They have someone here holding them accountable. We'll continue to provide additional support for our English language learners, and we hired an additional support staff person to assist with the transition for our students learning English. And we anticipate that we will show an academic growth throughout the school year. We'll be measured with the NWA assessments, local assessments, WIDA, and DIBELS when appropriate.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Support.
Motion support. Any questions on the learning loss plan?
This is stuff that we've offered all the time, right?
There's some additional in
A
there.
little bit of
Yeah.
additional, but
Yeah.
for the
Things
majority
that
of
we've
it.
offered, yes. This will help us continue to offer funding wise. we're not sure what the funding impact will be. It depends on how many schools apply and the number of students, and so it could pay for some of it, it could pay for all of it. But any additional help would be welcome.
Kudos to whoever.
Okay, then motion support, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, under G, this is just a little bit of a discussion. I guess we talked about this at our last meeting, but we're still gonna talk about a little bit more in our feelings of, sinking fund, bond. Just kind of wanna revisit it from last month, if anybody's got any more thoughts and questions.
One thing that we have kind of done is we've taken kind of looked at the old bond and the new list from Chip Hendrick and kind of took the fluff out of it and the wants out of it and just looked directly at the needs. What are the needs of the district? And when we looked at that, we met with Chip Hendrick, Doug, Ken, Matt, and I met with him 2-3 weeks ago and kind of looked at the list and had some discussion items with him. Ken was too busy out on a tractor to join us. But we looked at the items, and the interesting thing is what you asked for in 2019 was just over $14 million. And the things that we're looking at now with the increased costs, with inflation, just the needs, it was just under $14 million. I want to say 13.5.
Close just about 13 even.
So that's kind of a shock, right? When you're looking at buses, secure entrances, technology, those types of things, a roof repair.
Yeah.
Can be kind of a shock. And I know one of the concerns in the community is the length of time for a millage and the amount of interest. So we're exploring some different avenues of trying to be creative with sinking fund and millage, or sinking fund and a bond proposal, and what that would look like. So I don't know if any of you guys want to say anything about what we talked about with Chip.
It's pretty straightforward. Kind of zoned in on the major items, that we need. I think a good approach for us as a board would be to, because like you said, you're working on some alternate financial arrangements and shifting between bonds and sinking funds. And for us, I'd like to see us have a workshop or something just devoted to that, to just talk about this particular thing. I think that'd be a good idea to, because we have to get it going. And one way to do that, I think, is to just have a workshop and just focus on this, and that's all we talk about. I don't think it'd be real lengthy, but I think it'd be worth our time to.
I do think the combination of the two is probably the best option to get something passable and, avoid that extra interest. And I think we talked about a few things during that meeting of getting this knocked down a little further yet, maybe. Splitting some things out, and there's a couple things on there that we discussed that athletically that sound like a great idea, but I don't know after doing some more research that there's a good idea as initially.
Okay. Go ahead, Matt.
I would say my biggest takeaway from that talk was, I think we had some good communication or good discussion around communication. Like it seems like no matter how hard you try, it's hard to get the message out to an entire county or parts of 4 counties. So by chunking it up and maybe we separate the bus and tech
as one entity that people are used to seeing and have seen before and have proved over and over and over. Maybe that'll help make it more comfortable. They can understand it, and if they're watching, the buses are aging very badly, and
Buses are
that's not one that we could pick off with ESSER funds. A lot of things we have been doing, and it's great, and you and your staff have been doing a great job of taking care of everything we could take care of so far. But we're really down to the big hit things: the bus, the tech, safety, and very obvious aging parts of the
Renovation
building
issues.
that are long past due. So
Is there anything other than buses that we're spending a lot of money on to fix lately?
Depending on what your thoughts are on a lot of money. There's an electrician here tonight, I'm still wondering why he's here, so, I think just, a big expense is gonna be the roof as well.
Has there been a lot more leaking?
There, not yet, we had a
There's
lot
a
of
lot that hasn't yet been done.
Yeah, we have a lot of it patched, this past year, but we have parts of the roof 20, 30 years old that hasn't been done. The district was fortunate a few years ago where they were able to get a lot of hail damage. A lot of the roof repaired with hail damage, but some parts of the roof weren't touched. I wanna say one part, I don't wanna say where in the building, but it hasn't been touched since the 90s. So that stuff's important. It's just, it'd be nice if we were able to create a system, if we were able to get a shot in the arm, if you will, of finances and start building up a rotation. Like, this is what we're doing, that we're putting this money away, and next year we're doing that part of the roof and so forth. That would be the goal. That would be my goal, for sure.
And it's the same thing with the buses to get back on rotation, because that's really the secret is to, we've gotten behind but to get back on a rotation, and then it becomes a lot easier.
Putting a lot of pressure on Scott, trying to keep them running.
Should be buying one bus a year, is what we should be doing.
But we need an immediate 4.
4 would be nice, as soon as possible. If you had those in a bond, right, you'd sell them in a series. So your buses, you wouldn't have 14 buses aging out at the same time. You space them out so that they're spaced out, and then you can build that rotation up. That's the one thing I know I've said 100,000 times, and apologize for that, but you can't buy buses with a sinking fund.
Right.
And, in talking to the finance attorney, he's not sure why. It's just because sinking funds are supposed to be the nuts and bolts of a building and not buses. And I think 5 years ago, they started letting instructional technology in and security. Up to that, it wasn't allowed in the sinking fund. So that's where you get that fine line of looking at both and creating a solid plan of this is going to go in the millage, this is going to go into, and what's the cheapest way we can do it, but also the least amount of time, and the most affordability for the community.
Right.
Yeah, whatever. The one thing with the sinking fund, we're only allowed to raise, 3 mils?
For 10 years,
For 10 years, so you're not, in McBain, that's not a huge dollar amount.
Right.
So you're gonna try to save some of them.
Well, 3 mils would be almost $1 million.
Right, I get that, but if you're, you can save that, but you save that, and then all of a sudden, 3 years down the road, what you saved it for is 20% higher because of inflation.
Right. One of the things that Chip talked about too is we talked about the supplies and some things starting to come down in price. He thinks in the next few years, because he said, you have, I'm not picking on electricians, but it's sitting on a bunch of wire and cabling because he couldn't get it before, so he bought a ton of it when he could get it, and they're just sitting on it, and pretty soon they're going to want to move that. But you're always going to have increase in costs.
And we did talk about that to an extent as far as, 10 years, that's a long ways to push stuff out. We don't want to push stuff out that far.
One of the things of shifting over things to a sinking fund is that potentially you could save yourself a lot of, like a lot of your bond costs. would be a lot less. If you shift more to a sinking fund, you would have as large bond costs. You know, I think at the end of the day, you'd have a lot less engineering costs, you'd have a lot less, potentially, you know, some things are still gonna have to be engineered, but I think there's room that you could avoid some of those contingencies and, general condition fees and, you know, on that proposal, there's like 25% by the time you add on the contingency fees and the architect fees and blah, 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 that's 25%. Potentially with breaking it up with a sinking fund, there's potential that some of that could be less or maybe even eliminated. Not all of it, you know, but I think there's potential savings there.
Yep.
You want to schedule a workshop?
I think we should, in my opinion. I don't know how the rest
Yeah,
of
I
it.
mean, then we
Good to
could
just focus on it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it,
choose some of the stuff apart that,
yeah.
let's lump together and decide.
Any particular day or time or
I would just soon shoot for another Monday.
another Monday?
That
myself.
probably would be, yeah.
I'll pull up my calendar here. Not everyone in the building needs to see it, so I took it off the screen.
Chair keeps.
I got here before you.
Did you swap me out?
Oh, no, I wouldn't do that to you.
I wonder why I can't reach the table.
Matt had that or something.
We have to beat Ken next week, next month.
Huh? I got the odd chairs. There's a good one back there.
Is it?
You want to look at the end of October or early November?
I'd say probably the sooner the better. Let's.
Yeah, I think it's, I don't think it'd have to be real lengthy either. I mean, I
We
think.
don't want to do it on Halloween, do we?
What plans?
Might get me out of some plans.
Yeah.
That would not be a good omen.
We'll look at the 24th,
That'd be fine with me.
Good for me.
6 o'clock.
Sure.
Let's get this ball rolling.
I'll be out of town, I think. But that's okay.
You want us to look at another date?
I don't know that it's gonna be much better for all. I think it's okay.
And then I'll just plan on having some different scenarios for you.
Okay.
Let's see what that looks like. If there's something you guys want to see, let me know. And I can build it, preferably not the 23rd, but the day before.
Why?
Preferably before.
The morning.
So am I right, Scott, that we have 3 voting date options?
Right now,
February and November?
yes, so right now there is, I don't want to, I believe there's legislation, it has not passed yet, but I believe it is in motion. We may exclude the May election date and move it to June. And then you'd have June and November is what you would have. I don't know when they're looking at taking a vote on that or not, but that was the last, and I don't think there is one in February. For some reason, I thought there might be, but I don't think there is.
We would always
What
have
about
a,
August? Is there one in August?
I think if that legislation passes, it will eliminate August as well.
Oh.
That's information I can have for you on the 24th.
and we would have special election options.
Mm-hmm.
That's a possibility out there.
Possibility, yep. Just with that, you would potentially incur all the cost.
Yeah, I think you would.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking at, you know, by the time you pass it, and then it's, you know, a bond money you won't get till like your winter tax bill. So I mean, real quickly you're out a couple of years before you get any money in, you know.
Right. Okay.
All right. Moving on to reports and communications. Myself, I really don't have anything to report on. Superintendent?
I've got another 54.5 slideshow for you. I'm just kidding. I think I've said enough tonight. I would just like to take the opportunity to brag on the administration, the teachers, the support staff. I mean, if you look at those test scores, I mean, they're doing an excellent job and they're working hard and it's showing. You know, we keep talking here about learning loss, and I keep saying it's gaps, right? Where they're filling those gaps in, and the kids are catching up and retaining that. And I'm super proud to be a part of McBain schools and the staff, and a part of the staff here. They did an excellent job.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Principals, do you have anything extra you want to talk about, or?
I do not.
Okay.
Unless you have any questions, no.
Mr. Principal?
I'm great.
I would like to introduce my two seniors who are here tonight.
Okay.
And last year, remember, our CTC program is now starting our Grow Your Own Educational Careers program.
Yep.
And last year we had 2 students, we have 3 this year. Kyle's not here tonight, but Brianna Wilhelm and also JC Schorner. So they're here doing their due diligence with their job and task at hand. And I'd like to thank them for spending the long evening with us. And I'm sure they're learning lots, so.
All right.
More than you wanted, right?
Okay, I guess moving on to our action items. Action item A is to accept the resignation of Brenda Sprick.
Make that motion.
Support.
Motion support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Action item B is the hire recommendation of Morgan Isinga. Morgan graduated here last spring and is working at Little Wheels, right?
I'm studying early childhood.
Yes.
So
Motion.
Support.
Motion support to hire Morgan Isinga. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Morgan. Action item C, the first reading Neola policies 37-1. You want to elaborate a little bit on that, or?
that's just our policy updates, mostly federal and state law updates that we have to do every year.
I had one question on that, the one pertaining to the drone.
Mm-hmm.
In that, there was some options, and one of the options was that we will have a qualified operator,
Mhm.
and then we'll have a visual. Somewhere in there there was some options that we could allow that operator to designate his authority to another person. I don't think that'd be a good idea.
Okay. So right now, we're only allowing Rambler Review students that are certified to fly the
Okay.
drone.
Right.
So you have to be 16 and older, and all of our 16 and older Rambler Review kids are certified to fly.
Okay, so I'll have that certification.
Mhm.
But in here, there was an option that would allow them to designate that to another person.
That might be a different licensure. I'll have to go back and look at that.
Okay. Because I don't think that'd be a good idea.
No.
You know?
No, I don't think so either. I don't think so.
It was pretty clear to me anyway that they could designate another person if they wanted to.
Well, don't designate me.
No.
I was gonna say, it shouldn't be 16 and older, it should be like 16 and under.
Yeah. True.
You don't want me flying.
But they,
That's one thing that drew me when I read the policy was that.
yeah, I'll take a look at it.
Okay.
They are certified, and the drone is licensed with the FAA. So we're following all of the
So this
requirements.
pertains to our drone, or does that pertain to any other drone on our property?
They need permission from me to fly a drone. So I think what's happened, this policy's been in place in districts for quite a few years, and I think what was happening was you had drones flying over sporting events and filming practices and different things like that and interfering with the events. I know the MHSA was really involved with this.
Okay.
So let me find out about handing off
But
the
any,
authority.
if you were to authorize another drone, they'd be subject to these policies,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And usually ours would just use it for the marching band
Mm-hmm.
and maybe a little bit before the football game starts or
Senior
outdoor
night.
activity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Motion support for accepting the Neola policies. Any more discussion?
I think you wanna do a second reading, correct?
This is first reading,
First
first reading, yeah.
First reading, yes. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? That's right.
I just wanna make sure that we weren't approving them.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, okay, gotcha. Action item D is to approve, the band trip as presented.
So moved.
Motion and support,
Support.
to let our band kids go on a trip. Any more discussion or questions for Heather? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Alright. Action item E is the hire recommendation of Jennifer Wiltshire. Jennifer is going to be,
Kindergarten parapro. With Brenda Sprick's resignation, Yami moved into that position.
Okay.
And Mrs. Wilter's gonna move into Yami's position.
okay.
Motion.
Motion and support.
I'm just gonna stop. No. Support.
Motion and support for Jennifer. Any more questions or anything? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? At this time, I would like to entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Support?
Motion and support to go into closed session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. This time, the board is officially in closed session at 7:16.
I guess we officially need to state a reason for going in, but it's for proper discussion,
It's on the agenda.
whatever it's called,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
on the agenda, so you should have seen it.
So, yeah, the reason for going into closed session is, the Booster Club. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Motion
Support.
and support. Any further discussion on the advertising on the softball scoreboard?
Just look forward to seeing it.
Is it gonna be like banner style?
Yeah, I'm not sure yet. Probably attached to the scoreboard somehow. Booster Club told me that they found that it was gonna be cheaper for them to create their own advertisement and put on there or underneath there than it would be to have the scoreboard company do that.
Okay.
Sure.
We're very, very kind for these businesses
Oh,
to
goodness, yes.
Very much so.
provide that.
Have they ever had a scoreboard up there?
No, not the girls, no.
Yeah, it's definitely a need.
Just started using that field, well,
10 years ago?
not even that, I don't think.
Yeah,
Very appreciative of the Boosters Clubs. They're doing.
yeah.
They're doing a good job.
Would you like them to come to November's board meeting, the Booster Club? I guess we could vote on this. I could ask at the round table. Sorry, sleepy.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Moving on to public comment, seeing none, assuming none, so we will move on to our board roundtable. Just take a quick second if anybody has anything on their mind.
I'm just really excited about getting the bond thing going. That's, we gotta do that.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah, cause as you said, we're a year so
Yeah.
out, even if we do pass it.
Yeah,
And then you might be a year or so out on getting a bus,
we could. Yeah.
because, not because the
Lots of
money's not
delays
there,
out
it's
there.
because of the, yeah.
Be good to get it going.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Support.
Motion support to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 7:41.
So we're gonna have them come in?
Who's that?
Athletic Boosters?
Yeah,
Fall asleep over there?
I did, man. I was struggling through the presentation. I feel like I've done this